Another very good and popular valuation ratio is the PEG ratio, which incorporates some things from the PE or price to earnings ratio in it, as we'll learn about in a second here. So the thing is with the price to earnings ratio, a lot of people would say, well, that's great. I'm looking at stock price, I'm looking at earnings per share, but I'm not really considering, what are the future growth prospects for this company or this organization? Maybe I'm willing to take something that's a high PE or a low PE if there's a lot of significant growth out there that might benefit me. And thus the PEG ratio was born. It also comes from the raw data, comes from the income statement and also looking at the current stock price. But and the formula behind it, which again, don't ever do these formulas, but if you're interested in doing formulas, the PEG ratio is basically taking your PE ratio, your price divided by its earnings, and then dividing that number by the projected annual growth in earnings per share. So you're looking, what is our earnings per share? And calculate earnings per share and your projected annual growth in that earnings per share. Okay, so there's a lot more moving parts in here. Don't worry about that as much. I would just go out and try to find things that will list out the PEG ratio. You can find those out there. But that's how it's determined. The PE ratio divided by the projected annual growth in earnings per share. And the idea behind it is it's putting in a factor of earnings. What is our earnings per share of stock? So if you have more stock, the earnings are very important. And how is that growing? It's all about growth. So it's using that basic format of the PE ratio and then looking at looking at a growth factor. Well, a PEG ratio below 1 is considered to be a good value, right? It's an undervalued stock. It might be something that's a good value with maybe some good growth rates out there relative to its price and its earnings. That's where the PE ratio part comes into play. So if you're a value investors love PEG ratios because they're looking for companies that might be, whatever reason, the price has been driven down, but their future, and maybe their earnings have suffered in the short term, but their future earnings per share growth rate might be great, which makes a better, a PEG ratio, basically more below the number 1. So if anything below 1, take a look at it, and actually the smaller the number when it comes to PEG ratios, the better. So if you're looking at a company that's got a PEG ratio of 0.5, and the one you're comparing it to has a PEG ratio of 2.5, well, that 0.5 is a much greater value when you look at it in terms of price and its future earnings per share growth. So PEG ratio, great, particularly if you're looking for those undervalued stocks.